before we get into the show, make sure to do a couple things. First of all, click the subscribe button down below and make sure to turn on your notifications, please, in order to get updated content that I start to put out. I do put out weekly videos, so hopefully you enjoy those. The second thing you can do is to make sure to be empathetic and understanding for all of my guests that come on this show, but otherwise, enjoy the show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 20 of Deep Dives into the Minds of Esports. My name is Blake Panishevitz, and on today's show, we have a wonderful human being who has been previously a tournament organizer, administrator, and now the manager for the British Hurricane Contenders team. Please let me introduce Ysabel Muller, maybe better known as Noukky. Welcome.
Hello, guys.
So I think I got your name right, which is it's a good start to the show because
was good. Was clean.
It's clean. Yeah, like a lot of times. Okay, my girlfriend has definitely said I like to watch the beginning of your shows because I get to watch you butcher everybody's name who you get to have on here, and I'm like, oh, thanks for the support and reassurance. I appreciate it. So we're gonna have a lot of cool things to talk about, and I don't know how much you've watched of my show, but I like to kind of dig into the person that is you because I think that's kind of important and not something that we get to see very much into the outside world. So we're gonna start it off a little bit easy because sometimes the easy questions are just kind of fun to do. And one of the things that we've talked about before, and I don't know if anyone else has ever really seen this before, is kind of where you got your name. Okay, the name Noukky. And I kind of picked it up right away, and this is probably a terrible thing to admit, but it's because I'm a Limp Bizkit fan. I like some of their music. I think that it's fairly catchy. It's not as bad as Nickelback probably for admitting, but it's like a step or two away from there. So, Noukky, how much did Limp Bizkit play a role in your life to get a username that you would decide to keep forever and ever into pro esports?
To be fair, it was not all Limp Bizkit.
Okay.
It was just the influence, but it had a part. It had a part. When I was a teenager, I was a really big edgelord. You could say that. I was like those kind of girls that did much eyeliner and spike armbands and stuff like that, and band shirts and all black, and yeah, it was a fun time. And I was a big fan of stuff like Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit and Sum 41 and whatever. And it stuck a tiny bit to me. And as I did my first WoW character, actually, I really dug into the name, the Scandinavian-ish names, and they have a name that's called Anuk. Mm-hmm. And I did a play on that. I just called my character Noukky, and nobody ever pronounced the A anyways. They all called me Noukky. So when I switched to more serious gaming, like esports, League of Legends, MOBAs, I was like, I don't need the A there, and so I fancied it up a tiny bit. I was like, Nuki. It's a tiny bit boring, so I just put a few letters in there, and it reminded me of the Limp Bizkit song. So I was like, yeah, I can go there. I can go there. I don't care what it means. I just go there.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. So, I there's some cool things about you as a person. I'm obviously Volmail has done a very long segment digging into a lot of your administrative and being a team manager. So if anyone's ever interested in doing that, you're more than welcome to check out his content. It's very good. I ended up watching through it because I don't like to ask the same questions because I think that's in poor taste of interview style. But what I did find is I found your Reddit account, and I decided that I was going to go back to the very beginning of your Reddit account. And there's not a ton of fun things there, but League of Legends was a big part of your life, it seemed like, which is kind of cool, and maybe we'll talk about that now that you're in Overwatch, which, I mean, I guess you could argue which one's a better guy. I actually came from League. I actually didn't play Overwatch at all when I got hired into an Overwatch team because I thought the game was not that great. And I was actually working with League of Legends people when I got brought over. So there was some reminiscent there of oh, I like this. But let's start even before that. So I don't know if you know this, but Germany seems to be my mecca for getting guests on this show so far. It's pretty nice. So far, I think I've had 4 Germans on. I think you make 5.
We are pretty awesome.
You are, and I'm learning so much about Germany and like your school system and like how it works and how each individual is kind of affected by that, and it's very interesting, kind of getting into like the way that your system works over in Germany. So I think we're gonna kind of kick it back a little bit to maybe that. What was school like growing up for you? Where did you go to school? What's it like? You are also the same age as me, so that is context. I'm not going to say what that age is, but if someone is curious, you could always look it up on me. So,
wow, now you expose my age, which is probably also written down in Wikipedia somewhere. Anyways,
it is.
School was not a big deal for me. I was always like a student that. Like I'm one of those boring good students, that the teachers liked and that was allowed to go to the teacher's room, not like the others. I was like doing duties like picking up, like we had like class books that we had to bring to every teacher's room, like when we switched rooms for classes. And so I was always the one taking that and bringing that and picking it up from the teacher's room in the morning and getting it back in the afternoon. And yeah, I didn't have any like big troubles in school. Like I was not like one of the nerds that the others bullied. I was none of the cool kids that the nerds disliked. I was just in the middle somewhere all the time.
Did you fit in with the groups then?
Yeah, it was just a flow back and forth, because like the cool kids were appreciative of me helping them with stuff, and the others were appreciative of me like connecting with them too. So I was always like the mediator all the time.
You're a mediator. That's kind of funny if you look at where you're at now. And
kind of, yeah.
When we kind of get through that, because you obviously taught at elementary school for a little bit, but we're gonna get through some of that. You mentioned going through school and it wasn't that bad, and that you were more of an edgelord goody two shoes, which is a hilarious statement to think about a little bit.
A tiny bit.
Okay. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I have a little sister. She is 3 years younger than me, and she has a mental disability. So she's basically like a kindergarten kid, around age 6, 7-ish.
Okay. Has she always had a mental disability, or something that she grew into? Okay.
She was born with it.
Okay. Do you play a large role in taking care of her?
Yes, I do. The only time I was not with my family to take care of her was when I started my studies for teaching, because in my area they didn't really have those courses in my uni here, so I had to move a bit further away in Germany. But since I was little, basically, I was always like the big sister and took care of her, and learned to take responsibility very early in my life. Okay. Because of that.
Okay. Was it something that you had to do because your parents were working, or was it something you just chose to do?
It was something I kind of chose to do. It was hard as a small kid when I was 6, 7, because we lived in our grandparents' house. So when my mom was working, we were always at my grandparents', or when I came back from school, my grandparents were always there, and they took also care of my sister. And for me, it was kind of complicated as a kid, because if you have a mentally disabled little sister, then you're not that important. And so it was always like taking back for her, and I think that's where my nature itself comes from, because I always try to get others comfortable.
Okay. So growing up, a lot of times it was all about your little sister, because it a lot of times needed to be, right? Because of where she was at. It wasn't. And I imagine being as a kid that would be very hard to, because I don't think you can ever really grasp your mind around it as a kid. You don't really understand how the real world works to a degree. I imagine that was really hard on you kind of growing up.
Yeah, it was. I was definitely had like phases where I was more troublesome, because I was like, I want to have attention too. So I just push her or something, that is, or do something bad or whatever, just to get a tiny bit of attention. But it regulated itself when I was getting older and understanding why it's necessary for my parents or my grandparents to be like that.
So you mentioned that you were living with your grandparents growing up, and I actually lived with my parents split up when I was very young, and my mom ended up living with my grandparents, and so I ended up living with my grandparents primarily for like most of my like high school era, like all the way through high school almost, and it was because of like financial reasons, like my mom couldn't afford to like get us our own house and stuff like that. So it was just easier to live with my grandparents at the time. What's your story for that? Why were you living with your grandparents? Is it something that was more cultural based? It was something that was socioeconomic based?
It's pretty similar to yours. My parents were never really married, so they just lived together. Like we have a house with my grandparents, where my grandparents live in the it's not called basement, the one above the basement, the floor level. Attic, yeah. And we were living on the first floor, and yeah, my parents didn't get along too much when I was younger, and so at one point my father got kicked out, and was just my mother and my grandparents then. And when I was around 6 or 7, my mother decided to leave too. So I was basically, when my sister was 3 and I was 6, there was the time where we just had to decide, or like my grandparents had to decide if we lived with my grandparents or with my dad. And they always tell me the story that the judge asked me, because I was old enough to decide myself, and I said I want to live and stay with my grandparents rather than my father. So they took just my sister with them, since she needed care anyways, and they didn't want her to grow up in a home or something. So we just stayed at my grandparents. They took care of us till now, basically.
So you would have been like 6 or 7 when you had to make that decision, right?
Yes.
Okay, I had a actually somewhat similar thing when my parents divorced, where I remember going in front of a judge and being that old. And like looking back at it now, like for me at least, I realized that I did not have the conscious development to actually, like, that is a decision I don't think that should be put on children at all. And I think it's terrible. I don't remember it. Like, I remember bits and pieces of it, because like I remember going into the room, I remember the judge being across, I remember what he looks like, and I remember him asking which one do you want to live with, and I answered both. Like I don't want to lose either one of my parents. Like it was really terrible that that happens, and that they think that a 6-year-old has the conscious. Like, I'm sorry, 6-year-olds can't. If they can't feed themselves, they can't make a decision like that. And like, so that must have been like really, really hard for you. What were the consequences of that? Did you end up not seeing your dad anymore? Did you end up not seeing your mom anymore after that?
I definitely ended up seeing not my mom not anymore, since she left pretty consciously. It was not like she was wanting to move with us or something. She literally just left. It's hard to talk about, because it's still like it's still a tiny bit troublesome. And my dad was one of those very typical I come to the greater holidays, if ever, kind of people. So it was something that definitely shaped me, but it's nothing that like dragged me down too much. I think, at least. I think I came out pretty nicely for someone
I would say
getting abandoned by their parents. So, I'm pretty glad it happened. It's some of those things that you experience in life, and that basically can make you a better person. And I'm glad it did.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of the way that I've always viewed the way people work is generally we always compare things to the worst events that have happened in our lives. So like anytime something happens after that, you always compare it to what is previously. So you have some reference point. And when you go through a lot of terrible shit, you kind of get different reference points. And I can kind of relate to that because so like my mom ended up she was a drug addict. And so I had a lot of resentment because later on in my life, I ended up moving back to my dad. And I remember having a lot of resentment towards her for a long time about, wow, you functionally just abandoned me and my brother. Like, you could have taken care of us. You could have been there for us, but you just abandoned us functionally. And there was a lot of resentment that I had to kind of start to work through. And it's not something that is easy or fast, and it really depends on the person. It's actually probably, for me, one of the most terrible experiences I think I've went through is having to deal with that. And I was older, so like I kind of understood what was going on. I can't imagine being like under 12 and having that experience happen. And be that way. Did that affect like the way that you behaved, the way that you acted? Did you have issues with that because of it?
I think I had, or like have had, kind of connection issues as a kid. At the moment, it's definitely like when I grew older, it definitely got better, but it was always like these connection / abandonment issues that are always with you. Like you get panic if you like have a argument with someone, like a really heavy argument with someone that you like a friend or either of my grandparents. I always got really panicky when that happened. But I'm getting along with it. Like I started working on it very late, to be fair. Like I started taking care of it when I was like early 20s. So it was still troublesome when I was a teen, definitely.
Yeah.
But I'm feeling pretty comfortable right now about it and about like how I'm acting towards other people. I think it's not only a negative thing. One thing that the whole experience taught me is like how to be kind to people, and I think if you're a person that has gone through something like that or something similar where you are like, I know how shitty it can be, then you're automatically like, at least for me, I'm automatically like more kind to people and I'm trying to make them more comfortable. So I think all in all, it made me a better person more than a lesser person.
Yeah, I can't imagine what I would be like not having some of those experiences, like the way that it shaped the way that I view things and I view people, and I probably had a large part to play in the role in the fact of the career choice that I decided to go on. So probably some reference there. If you could go back and you could look at your 6, 7, 8-year-old self and you could give them any sort of advice, right? Because there's other people who are obviously going through a lot of similar things. Like I think it's fairly common nowadays for a lot of these stories to happen to people. What would you tell yourself?
I think I would tell myself to be more open about it, like be more open to the fact that it actually troubles you, because I know that I did a really bad job in acknowledging how much it affects me and how much it troubles me. So seeing the problem and actually acknowledging the problem is a very, very big part of working through it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So you lived with your grandparents. What were your grandparents like?
They were a tiny bit too nice, I have to say. Like in retrospective, they were too nice, but I think they were very kind to us and they took care of us. So there's nothing bad to say about that. I'm very glad that I ended up there and not with my dad. I think I would have been a more troublesome kid if I would have lived with my dad, because he's a tiny bit less compassionate than my grandparents was. So it was always nice. Like as I said earlier, I wasn't a really troublesome kid. I was very understanding from ground up due to the situation, and I wasn't getting into any trouble. I wasn't like I never got home late. I was like one of those nice people, like nice kids that went to play outside and got home when the sun set, and that's it, you know. There's not much to talk about there.
No, I imagine that because your grandparents had to have shaped some of your belief systems then growing up, because they were your primary caretakers. So I wasn't sure if you got some of your compassion or your honesty or the way that you take care of people from them, or if it was something else that you'd grew through.
No, the honesty definitely not. Like my grandparents were very close up, because like all of the war stuff in Germany, they learned like not to talk about problems. They learned to swallow stuff down and stuff. And I think maybe that was a good negative example or something for me to shape the way I was, or like the way I am now, with like being very straight up and honest with people, because I just like to communicate how stuff is feeling and where problems are, more than just swallowing them down and be like, yeah, it's gonna get better eventually.
You know, that's something you mentioned, that because of the wars that they were very closed up. That's actually not something that I've talked to a lot of my guests about, or it seemed to play a large role in any sort of their upbringing, because they're kind of removed from it to a degree with the generations that have passed there. But it seems like you almost seem because of it's through your grandparents and you lived with your grandparents, that there's only like one jump there. what was that like? That horrendous like event that they had to go through. How did that affect you because they had went through it? You mentioned that them being closed up. Was there any other examples of where some of these things kind of leaked through and you had to deal with?
I don't think so. There was like no PTSD kind of stuff or something. It was literally just that they were building stuff themselves. I think one thing that taught me very, very clearly was the work ethic with it, because they moved over from, I don't know if you know the story of Germany, of Eastern Germany and Western Germany, but they moved over the wall, or like there was the Berlin Wall, and they got out of Berlin to come to the West. So they've gone through so much trouble, and that's probably why they were how they were. And they showed me a really, really nice work ethic. Like if you get your stuff done, then you will feel better, etc., etc. And I think that helped me with my work ethic today. But other than that, I don't think so.
Okay. And then you mentioned, obviously your sister is a large part of your life. She sounds very, very important, the little bit that you've talked about. What was that dynamic like? You mentioned a little bit that they had to pay more attention to her. What was it like being in that situation where you were always the second child functionally? You were always which can happen with older siblings. First of all, just in general, older siblings tend to, when a new sibling comes along, that's actually fairly common, but you kind of had it like twofold, because there's this other thing going on that is needed more attention towards your little sibling. How did they handle that? Was that something that they were prepared for? Because a lot of people aren't prepared for that.
Yeah, they were definitely prepared for it. They handled it pretty nicely. There was never any trouble with it. They always got to the doctor with her. They always got to do checks with her. We all played with her, and there was no big complications. Now that my grandparents are getting older, or my grandma is getting older, she's needing more and more help, which is why I live back here again. Yeah. But she always told me if I get a job, if I get a chance to do what I want to do, then I should not pay too much attention to it. But it's like I still paid attention to it, because I just can't just go anywhere. It's always like on the back of my mind.
Yeah, you can't leave family behind.
Yeah, it's hard. I know that it's possible, and I know that there's facilities for my sister to be at, because every time I'm at events and my grandma, for example, if my grandma goes to the hospital or something for any kind of stuff, and I have to go work at an event or work in general, then we have a facility where my sister can go to for a few days. And I think with those kind of facilities, it's probably easier, but it's still like there's still like this tick in the back of my head where it's like, do I have to, and why should I, and whatever. It's hard.
That sounds like a lot of personal responsibility. Like, even like, I mean, granted, we are like older. Like for esports, we're older, which it's terrifying to say. Like 30 is approaching for me.
We're so old.
I mean, we're not Yiska old, but
Yiska old is a whole other level.
Yeah. I mean, but like I was thinking about the other day, I was like, holy shit, I'm almost 30. Like 30 is coming. Where the fuck did the time go?
Don't say that.
I know.
Don't say that to my face.
You don't look a day past 21, and I don't look a day past 12. So
that's because you don't have a beard.
I can't grow a beard. It's impossible. I've tried. It's gross. But that's a lot of personal responsibility to kind of go through, and I can't imagine like this fighting inside of, because esports is not something that is normally, hey, you get to be in this one area and that's it. Esports, especially with how passionate you are with esports and how much it involves traveling and doing these other things, and you're getting involved teams, especially if you're moving up to like the Overwatch League, which is eventually supposed to have geolocation. If that was a goal of yours, you would be gone almost every single week from what I understand the way geolocation work. And that sounds like a lot of responsibility to like decide, do I want to follow this dream of mine and risk leaving my sister behind, or do I want to find something else that is here and be able to take care of my sister?
Yeah, it's always a thing that's in the back of your mind, but I think I think a balance is definitely not unreasonable, where I can see my sister or see my family in general, and travel for the league or travel for anything else that I want to do. It's just you have to be okay with it in your mind, that you cannot always take care of everything and you cannot be responsible for everything all the time, since you also have a life that you have to live and you also have like dreams yourself. It's really hard for me to think about, like, I always had a problem putting myself above others because of the way I grew up. It was always like the others above me, and I do it to this day, which sometimes gets me into really bad trouble. But it's who I am, and I'm learning to do it better these days, to put myself up a tiny bit more. But I think I could do that. I could be okay with living somewhere else and then seeing my sister just regularly instead of like being around her all the time. I don't think that she would have like a super big problem with it either, because it worked out as I was studying too, where I was away for like 3-4 months and then came back for like a month of vacation or something. So I don't think it's a too big of a deal.
Yeah. So growing up, you're going through school. You are you're a very good student, I take it. Like, did you do well in school? Was it something that you struggled with, or?
We have, like, since you know the school system a tiny bit.
I do. There are three different branches when you get into high school. There is the lower class, the middle class, the higher class. Functionally, I can't remember their German names.
Yeah.
I think what's called gymnasium.
Yeah, gym basically. Yeah, that's the higher one.
That's the high one.
That's the highest one. Yeah. So I was studying. Yeah, nice. I was studying in the middle one. Because there's a progression system too, where you can move from the middle one to the higher one if you have good enough grades. And I was a kid. I didn't want to go to the big city and go to the higher ones. So I was like, yeah, I want to do the local thing first and then see how good I am. And I was progressing through that. As I was in the higher one, I was more of a lazy student when it came to that. So my actually like final education grades are more like middle-ish. But in the early days, I was pretty okay.
Okay. When did you switch from the middle tier system to the gymnasium?
Basically at the end of it. In the middle system has like 9 years of school. 9 or 10 years of school, and then you switch to the gymnasium for like 11, 12, and 13.
Okay.
It's just a normal progression where you can just apply to gymnasiums and they just take you then. I was at that's a fun fact. I was at a technical gymnasium. Basically means we didn't have like the standard subjects. We had additional like more electronic heavy subjects like statics and how buildings work and electronic stuff, like how electronics are built, and IT and big industry, like machines, how they work with metal and stuff like that.
That's interesting, because when I had Roy on the show, he mentioned that he went to one of his schools was also unique in the fact that it had like coding and stuff like that, because he switched schools to something that had different specializations. Your guys' school system sounds so much better than ours, just offhand, but I personally think our school system is garbage, so that could be my bias. Feels bad. Like our healthcare. Feels bad.
German healthcare is nice.
Yeah, I can't. I imagine. When I chopped off my fingers, just an FYI, that bill was roughly going to be $85,000. So,
ouch.
Yeah, I didn't have to pay that, thank God. But that's how much it costs to lose fingers, if you're wondering. So, looking at school, you did okay in school. Was school something that was? Did you have a lot of attachments to school? Did you do a lot of things? Was it something that you just wanted to get through? What was school like? For me, school was pretty. I didn't really like school. I didn't really attach to anything in school. I did things like prom, and stuff like that, but I didn't really like care about most of the stuff that was going on in school.
I had like a tiny bit of attachment. I was like in a few extra classes that I liked to do. Like I was in the school newspaper in my middle school kind of thing, middle class kind of thing. Because I liked writing. I was in my choir, my school choir, for probably 4 years or so because I like singing, and so I was just attached to that. But other than that, I didn't do too much there. It was just being in school, then being with friends, and those 2 extra activities, and then that's it.
Okay. You mentioned friends. Did you have, so I didn't really keep any friends when I left high school. They were more, I would say they're more like acquaintances. There's people that I hung out with and stuff like that. But do you have any like long-standing friends that you got from school?
Not anymore. I did have them when I was studying. Like I went to study together with a good friend of mine that I knew from my basically 5th grade or something.
Yeah.
But the rest all just vanished in thin air, like they always do in school. So you barely keep school friends normally, like maybe a handful if
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fairly common. That's why I always ask. Some people have like tons of friends that they have from school. I don't really talk to any of the people I was friends with in high school, to be honest. I don't even talk to the people I was friends with in college a lot of times. So
I meet one or two sometimes around here when there's like fairs or something. You see them and you wave at them, and that's okay, you know. But
you wave and you walk away. You're like, oh, I'm going.
No, you talk to them 1 or 2 sentences. Yeah.
Oh, and then you're like, oh, well, I have to go to this thing.
No, it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Hey, cool. Was nice to meet you, Bob.
I'm just teasing you.
The
Noukky.
polite
it's
stuff.
okay.
Yeah.
So one of the cool things I have learned about Germany, because my brother went there when he was younger, is that you guys have fresh baked bread. Okay, like everywhere. Yes, that is what I've heard. This sounds incredible. And also terrible if you're doing keto. Okay. Well, that's exactly what I was going to go to. One of the things that you noticed, is that dieting and getting yourself healthy has been something that we have talked about briefly, because I'm on keto right now. And it is, but for me, it's been the best diet I've ever done, the easiest one. I also don't have fresh baked bread, because if I did, I don't know how I would do. We just have really, really bad bread. But that's something.
You have Wonder Bread, hello?
It's terrible.
Full of wonders.
It's, yeah.
Yes, you wonder what's inside.
I'm pretty sure there's some stuff in there that is illegal in EU.
It's probably illegal in Germany,
yeah, I'm pretty sure that your food administration has made stuff illegal that we put in our bread. So just throw that out there. That's what we have to look forward to. But the bread is really good from what I've heard. And you doing dieting and stuff. How do you deal with that?
It's so hard. I miss bread so much. As a German, you basically grow up on bread. You eat bread for breakfast and you eat bread for like dinner. Like you normally do like hot lunch and cold dinner. And it was so hard to get down from it, like to not eat bread anymore. Luckily, I found a keto bread seller in Germany. They actually do that here. So that's pretty nice. So I can actually eat bread again.
Okay. That's pretty.
But yeah.
Okay.
But it's all about meat and bread here, basically.
So health is something that's important to you now, right? The way that you kind of take care of yourself. And when did that start happening? Like, because obviously, growing up, I didn't care about my health at all. Really, the last 2 years is when I've started to care more, since I realized 30 is approaching. I'm like, oh, might want to start getting on some of this stuff so I don't have diabetes like the rest of my family. So when did that start playing a role in your life?
Basically, it didn't start too long ago, actually. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when I was like, early mid-20s, when I was like getting more aware of myself, and when stuff really worked out for me. Like the studies was really nice that I did in my early 20s, but I just didn't feel too comfortable in it. I was always like super eager to work with kids. I was always super eager to work with teens and stuff. But when I started studying, it just felt kind of off. It was nice. I always liked school. I always liked the structure with school, but uni was always troublesome for me, since I had to build my own structure, and back then I wasn't really able to too much. And so I took care of that like when I took care of myself more, I took care of that too. I quit studying. I was working at elementary school for a few years to just bridge the gap a tiny bit and moved back home. And as I got more comfortable with all the stuff that was happening in general, like that I was okay with failing the studies and getting more invested into stuff I really cared about, like esports, for example. I was happier, and I was getting happier with myself, and so I took better care of myself, basically.
So for me, food is a huge way for me to like, I stress eat very much. I love food. I love everything about food. The way that I talk about food is very much similar to the way drug addicts talk about drugs, and I know this because I worked with drug addicts. It is very much the same. Was food an issue for you growing up? Was it something that you turned to? Was it something that would help you through things?
Yes. Well, was definitely a big stress eater. A big, like, when you're sad, you eat to feel better. Definitely, yeah. That's why I grew on that many pounds in the first place. It's hard to talk about since I just recently, like last year, started to do these like online things with where I show my face, because I was really afraid to show my face online, to show my face anywhere, because I was so unhappy with myself. And I wasn't like really able to do something about it. It's really weird to say that, because lol, just eat less, but
yeah, fuck those people. Whoever says that, fuck those people. Fuck you. You do not know what I go through. Fuck you. Okay.
Yeah. And as I started to get more comfortable with that, I like people know, like, people haven't seen me for years. Like, I was always this person on the internet that never had a picture anywhere. And now I do this kind of stuff. I mean, progress, right?
It's great progress. I mean, you've lost a ton of weight too. So, like, that's amazing. Yeah. Like, I think it's incredible.
So afraid to post before after pictures.
That's okay. Bad. Me too. I mean, there's a couple, like, you can tell, like, I think there's one of like me going to Disneyland right after Owl, and I had put on like almost 40 pounds over Owl. Because I stress eat a lot, and it doesn't help when someone else is cooking and you can't dictate what the menu is. So
yeah, definitely.
So like that was not good for me, and I've lost it all since then in like 6 months. But
that's nice.
It is nice. I'm getting to the goal weight. It's slowly approaching, but like that was something that I kind of had to deal with stressing. And growing up, stress eating was like my go-to thing and how to handle like shit that was going on in my life. And so I can't imagine that was like, but another thing you kind of bring up is that your like self-value wasn't really there. Like, you didn't really value yourself. You thought really down on yourself. Was that throughout most of your life growing up, or was there a moment when that got worse?
No, it was basically pretty consistent throughout all of the time. I think, no, maybe not. The thing when it got really bad was when I was alone, living alone and studying. There was I had trouble like going to uni at one point, like in the later stages of it, because I was too unable to take care of myself. Like, I was just feeling uncomfortable around people back then. That's why I quit the studying in the first place, because I was just not able to go to uni anymore, and I was like afraid of like people being there and people getting to know me or anything around that kind of thing. It's
university was I did not do, like, my first 3 years of university did not go well. Like, I did not do well in school. I skated by, like, with very, very low grades for my first 3 years. And then by the time I hit my 4th year and I kind of figured out my shit, that's when I started to actually do better. But it took me 4 years, and it took me 5 years to graduate. So I had 2 years to, like, kick up my GPA from something insane, like we do a 4-point scale. And so I kicked it from, like, a 2 or a 2.2 to a 3.2 in 2 years. Like, it was...
That's nice.
It was, but it is good. It is good. Like 3.2 is like a 3 is like a B, so like slightly above that. But yeah, like it was rough, like going to university. But I know like how I ended up going to college because my dad kind of tricked me into going. He did. But you're leaving high school or the German equivalent of high school. And you're looking at going into university. What makes you say, I want to go to your university, first of all? Because it sounds like there was some self-conscious issues about this, and it doesn't really sound like you were fully made up when you did get there. But also, what made you decide to go and study? Because you studied English, right? To do teaching?
Yeah.
What made you decide, I want to do English?
Because I always really, like, I was a very language affinitive person. Is that how you say it? I think so. Like, I really like.
I think so.
Yeah. I liked languages in general. Like, I was good in French in school. I was good in English. I just grew up with like like video games, and they were all like there was some in English, and I liked like learning it. I was learning more English through video games and TV shows than I was in school, anyways. So I was pretty good at it in school, and it was a universal language. So I was like, I can communicate with so many people if I learn that. And in Germany, there is some trouble with the language itself. Like I really liked it, and so many people just didn't really care about it in my classes. And I was like, people should know this. People should be able to communicate with others if they are in jobs that require it, because nowadays almost every job requires it somehow, at least. If you have like English speaking, like in Germany, we have many English speaking people living here because of like the invasions and stuff. So in my area especially, we have so many Americans, and it's so helpful to be able to at least have a ground communication with them. So I was always like, yeah, kids should learn this, and I wanted to work with kids. So the logical thing for me at that time was just become a teacher and teach English, you know. But I thought about it a bit, like it was different in my mind than it was in actuality. So yeah.
Okay,
that's where I struggled.
Did you have lots of choices for schools that you decided to go to? Because that is something that I haven't really asked a lot of people. Is there like lots of like in the United States? Obviously, we have it's huge, and there is tons and tons of schools that you can choose to go to. Whereas Germany is probably the size of like one state and one of our smaller states. Is there like lots of schools that you had a choice to go to? Is there really only one you had to go to? What was the decision of picking where you wanted to go?
There's many unis in Germany. Like every bigger-ish city has a university. The only, I don't want to say trouble, but the only difficult thing is to find the courses that you want to do, because not every uni has every course, which I touched on earlier a tiny bit, that in my area nobody had like English for teaching. Since it's like a different subject, they only had like, since it's so technical in my area, they only had like maths and IT and stuff.
Yeah.
So there was a few unis that I wanted to go to, and most of the unis in Germany, I don't know how it is in the US, but in Germany you have to apply for uni. So for most universities, or for most like higher up courses like psychology, for example, or law and stuff like that, there is like a threshold that you have to be above to actually be able to apply to it. So you have to have we have grades from 1 to 6, and you have like, for example, for law or for medicine or psychology, you have to have like a 1.5 or something, like, which is really, really good grades to actually be able to get into those courses. So that was not too difficult, because English was not a very highly graded course, but I definitely had to go to a uni that was a few hundred kilometers away. I don't know how many miles it is, so I just say kilometers.
Yeah, it's cool. Okay. I couldn't tell you either. I think a mile is more than is it more than a kilometer, or is it less? I don't remember.
Let's just say approximately 150 miles.
Yeah. Okay.
it has to be right somehow.
Yeah, I think I think that it's 0.75, and I don't remember which one is the point, like 0.75. So, or around there, if I remember correctly.
Please get a real good system. Get into metric. Just scrap the other things.
Dude, can you imagine us switching to metric though? How terrifying that would be for the first 10
For the
years.
first 3 generations or so.
Yeah, like it might not take that long. It'd probably take 10, 20 years. Oh, hopefully we just get automatic cars and then it doesn't matter. Like we could just all switch because none of us will be driving.
Yay.
So Elon Musk, get on that. So
He's more into flamethrowers these days.
Well, I know, right? So looking at going to college, you first kind of get in there. What was uni like for you? Because you had to live a couple 100 kilometers away. Hard
Just
to
say
say.
miles, please.
You had to live approximately 150 miles away. That is our approximate that we're giving it.
Yes.
What was that like for you? Was it something you were excited about? Was it something you were scared about?
At first, I was excited about it. Like, I was going into it really excited. Like, my own space, my own, like, I can cook what I want. I can be where I want. I can shop what I want. But it turned around, like, after a year or so, where it was like, oh, I'm maybe not really suited for this right now because I'm missing structure that I actually need. Mm-hmm. So it became scary. Let's say that it became scary, and it made me go to uni less and less over the course of the 2.5 years I was there.
What was the change that happened that went from I'm excited to I'm terrified, I'm scared, I don't want to be here?
I think basically realizing that I wasn't able to do it. Like that the anxiety was too bad. The social anxiety was too bad for it. I think so. Yeah. I think that was also the point where I realized that I need help with it. So it was basically the down low of everything.
So games have been important to you. They're obviously important to you now because you work in gaming. When did games really start to take a role in your life? Because I know for me, they started fairly young, and it was something I would honestly use as, besides food, games were my other like escape mechanism to get away from the world. And what I tended to play was Ultima Online, and I don't know if anyone knows that game. It was an amazing game. But I played Ultima Online. That's like all I did. I just wanted to play Ultima Online. I did some gold selling.
Yeah. As a kid, wow.
Actually, me and my dad did. So my dad ended up having a brain tumor growing up. And so because he couldn't work, he would play Ultima and I would play Ultima. And so we started to figure out... Kind of, yeah. We found a system with the markets where they would reset their prices, and so we would buy very low and then sell in this other area very high. So we were doing market, and then we would sell all of the gold on eBay. And we actually bought like a new water heater and stuff. We made a lot of money.
Whoa,
yeah, like
nice.
It was. He made more than minimum wage doing gold selling with me helping him as a child. Now, argue that's slave labor, but hey, I was playing games and I didn't care. But so, anyways, video games were a large part of my life growing up, and they kind of used as an escape mechanism. Was that something similar for you?
Yeah, it was pretty similar. I started playing games back when I remember that we had a PlayStation when my mom was still there. I remember we had that. I remember playing Hercules on it. But yeah, always my family that lived here that also had like my uncle that had, I don't know, cousins. I think it's cousins. Like my uncle had 2 children, and they were always like gamers too. And every time we were visiting them, we sat down there and we played like SNES and stuff like that. And I also had friends where I was visiting, the early Twitch streaming where you visit your friends and actually sit on the couch while they are playing games. Exciting.
Who does that anymore?
Nobody, right?
I know.
It was like socializing and gaming at the same time.
That's why I like D&D, because I get to socialize with people, to be honest.
Yeah. I was doing that pretty regularly, and I got my first PC, I think with like 13. I was a pretty late bloomer when it comes to that, like 13, 14. And my first like internet connection via dialing.
Oh God, dial up.
Yeah, it was beep boop beep boop all the time.
Yeah. And if someone called, you had to get off.
Oh yeah, like my aunt actually, like, who's living across from Germany, always called every Saturday at 7 p.m. Always every Saturday at 7 p.m. It was like, okay, guys, it's almost 7. I gotta dip out for today. It was so nice, and yeah, that got me into gaming in general. I think my first like game where I had actually contact with like online people was called Ragnarok Online. It was like a anime-ish MMORPG. It was nice, if anybody knows it.
I've never heard of it, but WoW
was a
was
big part of
obviously
my
a
life.
big
I
part
think
of
it's
your
I
life.
think it's a European thing more.
Yeah, probably.
I don't
It sounds
think it was-
cool. Like just the name sounds like I'd be up for that.
Yeah, it was kind of an evil-ish thing.
And
But
then you obviously
anime
got into WoW, which like you
Yes.
and Joe talk about that quite a lot. And you reminisce. I actually never played WoW, and I've tried to pick it up occasionally because my girlfriend likes WoW, and I'm just like, I can't do it. It's like a shittier version of Ultima Online. Ultima Online was just a superior game. I'm sorry. It was.
You like this one friend of mine that I always meet at events that is a Hearthstone caster in Germany, and he's like always trying to talk with people about Dark Age of Camelot, and I'm like, dude, I know you're 30, but
So if I remember correctly, Dark Age of Camelot came out after Ultima Online, because Ultima Online was fairly early. But what was cool about Ultima, and so far a game, I'm ranting here, so people can skip through this later on if they want. What I liked about Ultima,
make a timestamp where it all ends.
Yeah, just skip. Ultima, what was cool about it is it had open world PvP, like all the time. Yeah, and also there was nothing that like you couldn't save stuff. So anything that was on you, you could lose. And that is the raw terror of going outside of safe zones, because you have to go outside of safe zones if you want to ever loot things. But someone could just kill you and take all your shit. Or you could be the one who kills them and takes all their shit. There's this
you could be a player killer. Wow.
Yes, that is some of the first player killers that it was fun. It was I don't know. So far, I've never found a game that has been like that to me. So
it's nostalgia at some point.
Yeah, I mean a lot of it is nostalgia, and I understand that. But so WoW is something that I have seen ruin lives. Okay, realistic. I'm not even kidding you. I have watched people who have had their lives kind of ruined by WoW. This is not everyone. This is like extreme cases, obviously, and especially during like university. Video games tend to have a very negative impact on people's grades, depending on the amount of time that they put into those video games.
Yes.
So, when you were in university, I imagine, because it's right around the same time that I'm pretty sure I was, League of Legends, was it out yet?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and you were probably mostly playing League of Legends then, weren't you?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
I wasn't playing MMOs that much anymore. MMORPGs, I wasn't playing WoW that much, but I definitely was playing League of Legends back then.
Mm-hmm. So League of Legends must have been your first taste of like esports.
Yes.
Right? Okay, because it was my first taste for esports too. And so like when I was looking through, I was like, oh my God, our timelines are very similar here. And so I wonder.
Timelines are similar, our diets are similar, our backstories are kind of similar.
We kind of look the same. Not really.
We kind of have hair, both.
We have hair. We have hair. What color eyes do you have? I can't tell with the dark.
I'm a blue.
Oh, okay.
I'm blue.
Mind. Okay, I can't tell from this. The light isn't good enough, dude. No.
The light. Wow, light. Look blue.
Okay, they're blue. Okay, I don't need glasses, so there is that. I'm sorry. 20/20 vision.
I mean, you can stand out in like one or two things. That's fine, but we're actually like twins.
Yeah,
we are like two eggs.
Yeah, you couldn't tell us apart. So that being said, kind of looking at League of Legends, what was it like? Your first taste of the competitive? Like, do you remember your first taste of what the competitive environment looked like? Because for me, it was season 2 of League of Legends. Mm-hmm. That's when it
same.
Got out for me. And I remember being in school, and towards the end of it, which kind of is what actually eventually helped me in school, because it made my career path a lot more clear of what I wanted to do. Because at that time I was going for music education, and I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. So what was your first taste of like the competitive environment, and when did you decide this is what I want to do? This is it.
I think my first taste was like I was playing League of Legends with friends at first, like friends I knew from WoW back then, and we tried out this cool new game that is like out, and we wanna see what it's like, and I was trying it out with them, and I was just casually playing. I wasn't like I was progress rating in WoW back then, but it wasn't like I wasn't like super competitive. Like I think the best rank I got was like World 78 or something in Mist of Pandaria, and that's it. But those friends were playing with me, and then in season 1 I was just casualing. In season 2 I was also totally casual, and then somebody was like, "Hey, let's play rank together." And I'm like, "Yeah, cool. We could play rank together." Like in WoW was a kind of competitive person, so I was like, "Yeah, why not? Like ranking sounds good." And then they implemented those leagues, like the bronze, gold, whatever.
Oh god, it was so bad.
And I was just playing. I was just playing ranked for fun, and then it got more and more serious because of my like kind of competitive nature. So I was like, "Oh, nice! I'm gold now, and now I'm platinum, and let's do it together, and let's try to get diamond, and whatever." And I ended up, I think it was season 4 or 5, where I ended up actually like touching diamond 5, and I was so proud of myself. And I think that's where it started. It was just like being in the competitive nature of it. I was like joining German clans and helping them, and like being in like smaller German teams and playing like Go Force and whatever. It was nice.
Yeah, I remember hitting Diamond was like I was so happy when I hit Diamond, and then it was to break Diamond in underneath 100 games with a new account, which I did. I was very proud of that too.
Whoa,
I never wanted to go above Diamond 5. I didn't care. I was like, I don't want to be. I've hit my goal. I don't want to be master. I don't want that responsibility. I don't want to deal with the people to get up to there. And I was like, I'm good with this. I'm gonna hit my Diamond. It's easy. Yeah. It's good. It feels good. I got like the nice Diamond. Diamonds are worth something. Call it good. So, you kind of start to look at getting into the competitive, like the competitiveness of it.
Yeah.
At what point do you decide, hey, you know what? Screw this school thing. It's not working out. I don't like it, and I want to do something else. Was it I'm going to go to games, or was it I don't want to do the school thing. I don't know what to do with my life?
It was at first. It was not really. I don't want to do the school thing. It was more like I can't do the school thing. Okay. Because I needed to get myself together first. But in general, like I was always into games, so it was a big part of mine. And when I went back home and back to my sister and my grandparents, I looked for a job, and I was like working at the elementary school, and I was still like I was already in gaming then, and I was switching from League of Legends to Heroes of the Storm because I was always like a tiny Blizzard fangirl. So I was like, "Oh, cool! It's so exciting! I can play Murky and stuff like that." And that's when it got more serious for me. Like League of Legends was always like I was competitive in it, but and I liked watching the esports, but I was never like, "Oh, I want to be a good player in it." Like I want to be like on really big teams. I want to win money and stuff like that. That started with Heroes of the Storm. I started playing it on the side while I was like streaming. Back when I was working in the school, I was also streaming as how do you say it in English? One word is missing. Basically, like to wind down the day, just sitting in front of the PC and
as a
like,
hobby.
Yeah, as a hobby. Yeah. And back then I was like streaming Pokemon because I was a fairly competitive Pokemon player too.
I did notice that you read it as well.
Yeah. And I was basically like just battling viewers all the time, and I was one of the bigger Pokemon streamers in Germany. I was streaming in German because it was just easier for me to communicate with people, and I wanted to actually touch a German audience with it. There was enough English streamers anyways with Pokemon. And then I transitioned a tiny bit to Heroes of the Storm, and I was playing it off stream. I was playing it fairly competitively, climbed ranks, was like rank 1 in the alpha, beta, whatever. And yeah, was looking for teams. It was actually like the esports that I was like, I gonna try this. I was in there from the alpha, I gonna try this, and got into talks with teams, and actually was about to join Pentasports, which is an esports organization here in Germany, to be on their community team, which had potential to be ranked up to the actual like team.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's where I basically started to be like super interested in esports. Like Heroes of the Storm was the first esports I was like super invested in.
So when you got to finally work for an elementary school, because this had been like a high school dream functionally, and you finally got the opportunity, did you find out it wasn't everything that you hoped it would be?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I've worked with kids and I hate working with kids. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there's a certain age you need to be above that I will enjoy working with you. And that age is like 15. Like, anything below 15, I don't particularly like working with. Because the maturity is just too different for me and I can't do it. What was it like for you working in elementary school?
Working in elementary school, like, kids-wise, it was really nice. Like, I really love working with smaller kids. I like the smaller kids more because they're not like too spicy all the time. Teenagers are more troublesome for me, at least. Like, the little ones at least have some kind of respect if you're bigger than them. So
they're still shorter than you. Yeah.
Yeah, they're still shorter than me. I can still pick them up and drag them somewhere if I need to. But I think the thing that broke it for me was actually like the system, how employments worked and how like school itself worked. That killed it a tiny bit for me, because there's a system in Germany where it's like either you're a contractor teacher or you are literally teacher by state, where the state basically like employs you. And most of the colleagues that I had there were contractors, and they said it was like really, really hard to get actually like the fixed job as a teacher. It was more like contractual work, and they had to fear that the contract is going to run out and that they don't get hired again, that they have to move for schools and find a new space. And at the same time, I was like interested in esports, and that was contractor stuff too. So I was like, why don't I just do what I really love instead of doing that, which is basically the same thing, like job security wise, you know?
Yeah, I understand that. Contract work it's definitely terrifying. Like, I've been doing contract work for like 4 or 5 years now, and it's just always terrifying. Like, there comes a point where you're just like, oh, I've saved up, so if I don't have a contract, it is what it is. But I will try to find something new. You kind of get used to it after a while. So you obviously were looking at Heroes of the Storm to be a pro player, right?
Yes.
And what made you stop pursuing that?
Overwatch came out. It was as simple as that. Overwatch came out because I didn't play the first closed beta in Overwatch.
Yeah.
Or the alpha or anything, but I got into the second one, which was I think February 2015, 16, 15, I think. I don't know anymore. But I got into that. I played it. I've played the first closed beta on a friend's account, and I was totally hooked up. Like, I'd never played shooters before. I hated CS. I hated watching CS back then. I was like, I don't like this violent kind of shit. I rather shoot at like some like comic figure than this realistic stuff. But Overwatch somehow did it for me. Like, I had no shooter experience, but I still was really enjoying the game. I was maining Zen back then, which actually had to aim, so it was fun. And that was the esport that really hooked me up. Like, that got me away from the Heroes of the Storm thing, from the MOBA genre in general, and got me into this because I could transition my MOBA skills there quite easily.
Yeah, and there's like, I mean, Bishu obviously came from MOBAs, and he is a good example of someone who was able to transition his MOBA skills fairly well. So there is a lot of overlay for the two games.
Definitely.
So you're looking. Did you ever think, I want to be pro in Overwatch? Like, I just want to be a pro player. Yeah,
since Heroes of the Storm didn't work out too well, like I was about to be in this community team, but it was always like troublesome. It was my first experience as a female player in esports, and you can maybe imagine that it's a tiny bit hard at the start if you don't have like the thick skin already. And so I built up this thick skin in Heroes of the Storm, and I wanted to give it a new shot, basically, in Overwatch, where it was all fresh and second closed beta, so there was not too many people playing, and you could actually like build a reputation already, a better reputation, because you know how stuff works now.
So you mentioned having a thick skin and being a woman in esports, and I'm obligated to kind of ask this question. This might even be my clickbaity thing that I get later on.
Yay!
Right? Framing it that way. So I have a question for you. I've seen a lot of different arguments both ways, and I just kind of want to get your opinion on something. You mentioned that it was hard because you had to grow thick skin. Okay. Is it just hard because the environment it's just fucking toxic? Like there's a lot of shit that's just really toxic, or is it specifically like more toxic for you?
You mean towards women, or do you mean in general toxic?
Yeah. Is it just that the entire thing is really shitty? Because I remember growing up and like people calling me names, and it was fucking awful. And I also did not have a thick skin. I was like that. And I'm not comparing our events in any way. But do you think it's just the environment is bad, or it's specifically bad towards women?
It really depends on where you're looking. I think in general, like the lower tier environments, like the early, like ranked early league environments in any game are kind of bad.
Yeah.
Since people want to be competitive but don't have like the skill gap to be competitive, and so they always like shit on each other because they can't, like, people that are in these lower leagues are mostly people that don't really admit their mistakes too much, and
they
always like blame on others and deflect it and stuff. So that's why they don't climb, and that's why it's hard to climb, because you have to basically go through the whole swamp of that to get somewhere. But it's hard. I don't think that it's necessarily like super targeted against women, but I also believe that there is people that do. So this is like this is not a general thing. This is more like a specific thing of people being like that sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I've met people that I played with that I'm friends with till now. For example, Kib, which I knew from my very first Overwatch team, that is super tolerant towards women, that always like saw just the skill within and not like the gender that I am. And there's people that I met throughout this journey that were like calling me names because of it, or that message I have oh god, I can show you messages where I screenshotted like messages either in game or in Battle.net where I was applying for teams, and then people were like, I don't think our two other DPS or our two DPS players wouldn't be able to play with you because they would get like really moody all the time if they see someone female better than them and stuff like that. Like stuff like that dropped.
So when I see that, I automatically think that, wow, there are definitely instances where this is occurring, that this is really shitty, and those people are shitty people. So I'm sorry if you're one of those people. You're a piece of shit. Like, fix your fucking life. How about that? Because it's fucked up. It's
just being tolerant towards like anyone that is approaching. Like see the skill in people and not see the gender in people.
That is something I've noticed, especially with higher tiers. At least it seems like with like a lot of the pro players I've talked about. Like it's more about skill than it has to do with. Like that is the most important factor from a lot of the higher up and pro players or semi-pro players that I've talked about that they care about, because they're all trying to obviously make it to Overwatch or be the best team in Overwatch, and so for them it seems like it doesn't matter as much. Do you think that
I'm pretty sure if there's a woman that plays well, they are super tolerant about it. Like you see it with Gregory. There was like in the beginning there was like a tiny bit of doubt, because I think also cultural wise, because in Korea, it's probably a bit harder to basically earn yourself a spot. Yeah. But it's definitely like everybody loves her. I mean, I don't hear any bad things about her, and she has proven that she can be up there. So I think what people are scared about most of the time is that women are like there's definitely women out there that are trying to pretend more and like talk their way into things more than they actually show off. And that is a big problem that the scene has, and that's not only towards the man in the scene, because there is actually instances where there is women that try to abuse that system. So of course they are cautious about it, and of course they are like, oh, should I trust this person actually? So it's not always, and this is the controversial thing, it's not always the guy's fault. it's also the fault of those women that actually like do these things.
Yeah.
And I will get so much shit for this sentence. I'm pretty sure.
I'll make it so that everyone refocuses on me here. I think that's true for almost like if you look at like anything, the extremes or the people who are extremes tend to ruin the
reputation of the whole.
Yeah, the reputation of the whole. Like, I mean, I have a generally bad view of religion because of that. Like, and there was a few people.
Why do you hate Jesus?
I'm agnostic, actually. I don't hate Jesus. No, it's fine. I don't care about talking about religion. I'm actually more agnostic. I think that there could be something else, and there's no way to prove it, and so I'm not going to worry about it until I have to worry about it. So
I don't believe in anything in particular. So
yeah.
I like Norse gods. They're pretty cool. They have hammers. Cool. Yeah. They have beards. Like I can.
Yeah, I don't really look to the Norse gods because I just realize that I will never match their beardy masculinity.
Unlucky. I just like Vikings.
Yeah,
it's cool. just a flaw.
So, but I think it's fairly common that you get some. Like, I think that there are some people who ruin it for a lot of it. What I do want to make a distinction. I think that we need to start separating esports from casual play. Like, I think there needs to be a hard divide on those two subjects and the way that we talk about them and the way that we look at the social structures within those two things, because they're very, very different. They are not the same game. Like, when you look at competitive Overwatch versus ranked Overwatch, those are different games. Like, they're not the same.
Definitely, yeah.
And I think that maybe that's an important distinction that if people started making would actually help to fix the problem faster, like the problems that are there.
Yeah, I think many people just see, stuff in ranked is like really bad, and so the competitive scene is really bad because like there's so much in high ranked going on sometimes. Like, as I said, I have also experience with it where, because I was like playing support and I was playing like Lucio most of the time, back when Mercy got nerfed after season 2. I was shot calling. I was shot calling in ranked, and there was definitely encounters which was like, "Oh, you sound so fat." "Oh, did you grow are you growing a dick? Do you get a vagina job or something?" You know, like there is people out there that are that shitty, but it's not the majority. And I think many people are just putting those shitty people like in front of as a example, like as a negative example sometimes.
Yeah. Like,
yes, it's shitty. Yes, it's shitty probably very often, especially in like certain ranks, but I don't think you can generalize like that.
Yeah, I agree with that. So you end up starting to play Overwatch, and you're playing it a lot, and you're thinking, I want to go pro in Overwatch, right?
Yes.
What's the moment where you're like, screw this, I don't want to be pro in Overwatch. I want to do management in Overwatch.
So there was a time when I moved from EU to NA player-wise, because in EU I didn't feel like too welcome anymore when it came to like higher ranked teams. I was like jumping like tier 3, tier 2 teams quite a bit. And I met such amazing people. Like, I can tell you stories about like how I met Spree and how he wanted to quit competitive Overwatch, and now he's in Overwatch League after we talked about it again, and then he was like, yeah, I gotta try another team then, and how I was meeting Kip very early on and playing with him in a team and stuff like that. It was so many stories, and now I see them succeed, and it's like so nice. But to the actual question now, I was switching from EU to NA, and I maintained an NA schedule for about, I think, 7 months, 6-7 months. So I was basically nocturnal.
Yeah.
I was scrimming from midnight my time till 6 a.m. in the morning, and I had to take care of my sister a tiny bit too, so I wasn't sleeping that long. I was like napping in between, and it was just really bad. And when I got kicked off or like left my last team, which was how I don't remember, Enix. That's how it was called. Enix. When we disbanded, then I was like, yeah, but I'm really interested in like tournament stuff too. And that was the time when EU was like not having too many tournaments. There was like this big drought of tournaments since like Atlantic Showdown was over, all the MLG stuff was over, the NGE stuff, like the Winter Series stuff, was only for NA. And I was like, I should actually do something. Like I'm really passionate about the scene. I want to do something about it. So we had this event here in Germany, which is called like the DreamHack here in Germany, which is always in January. So I went there as a visitor, and I was basically trying to get connections to some hardware people, like hardware sellers and websites that like run tournaments here in Germany, to actually get a partner to maybe partner up in some Overwatch. That's how I found the guys from Strivewire. They were doing like many Hearthstone tournaments on their platform. We're working with Blizzard regularly, and they were actually like interested into investing into it. And so I put like half my salary from the elementary school away every month and put it into the tournament, put their share into the tournament, like had a donation goal up with like Matcherino and stuff, and did the Strivewire monthly for 3 months, which was really nice. It basically just boosted the EU scene a tiny bit, and had like the people are very thankful for it, to have like something that I can play on.
So you look at, you're doing tournament organization,
Yeah,
and you ran some, I would say, some fairly popular tournaments. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but probably one of the most popular ones, if only for the sentimental value, would be the one involving the Hulktastic tournament. It's probably
yes,
arguably, looking back, probably one of the most prominent as far as like the value that it gave to what you were trying to achieve. Yeah, the community. So you're running all these tournaments, and you're running some amazing tournaments. What makes you say, you know, I don't want to deal with this admin tournament side anymore? Like I want to go work with teams.
I think the biggest asset was like my passion to work with children. Actually, like to work with players. I was trying to do the esports thing throughout all 2017. That was my, I gonna climb this year, or I have to cease if I do something else. And when I started like doing projects for Blizzard, like I was working on Contender Season 0, for example, with them in an A and EU. I was like observing for Takeover 2. I was like observing for World Cup in Katowice. And I was actually, back then I was actually applying for Blizzard for esports coordinator position.
Yeah.
And over the summer, and that took very long to process. And when I didn't get in, like I think it was fairly close. It was like my third interview or something. And then I didn't get in. I was like, what am I doing now? Because there was no like Overwatch tournaments back then. And Blizzard was already reservating certain times for contenders, since I was still in talks with them about tournament organizing stuff.
Yeah.
They were reservating dates for contenders, and I was like, yeah, I can do more freelance, but freelance is like really really risky.
Yeah.
So I was still applying to do tournaments. I was still like seeing what I can do, and then somebody approached me, like 2 players approached me, Henzo and Craggy, from EU. Craggy is probably well known because of his stream. Henzo was with an OG EU person that went to tournaments with his Team Vivi's Adventure, and they were like, hey, there's like this open division stuff coming up, so we can play in the tier 2 league in contenders. Do you want to help us build a team? Because we know you have like very great organizational talent, and you were always pretty professional with your tournaments that we played in. And do you want to help us to build a team, since you know the EU scene so good? I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I can help, because I had nothing to do at that time. Like I had no contractual work. I had no like freelance gigs that I could do. So I was like, yeah, let's dive into it. And then we basically built the team known as Those Guys over the next few months. We took very long to build that, like 2 months, I think, of trialing stuff.
Yeah. So you get into this and you start working with the team, and then you're like, okay, I'm just gonna do management now. You're just like, I'm gonna haul in on trying to do this management thing, right? And then you throw some pitch decks together, and from what I've been able to gather, you get the job with British Hurricane.
Yes,
right?
I got the British Hurricane job through like mutual connections and the pitch decks, because back when I was like tournament organizing much, and I was also running like pugs in EU, where I was where I was literally sitting down after days where I was organizing stuff and just said like, you guys come play now. We're gonna test PTR packs now. And was opening the lobby, and I was basically doing management stuff back then too, because I was gathering players to play pucks and then hosting the lobby and running it and like showing results to Blizzard and to other people. I was in talks with Stylosa often, which is like a British YouTuber.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was helping him like getting footage. Like he really liked when there was new patches on PTR, he really liked getting pro footage of it. For example, when Doomfist came out, I recorded Twig POV for him, and then he talked over it in his videos. And so I got in talks with him because he was working with Spitfire back then, because he was their British consultant, how they like to call it. And he was like, yeah, they're looking for an academy team, and I saw you have like two UK players on your team. Maybe I can get you into talks with Dan. And Dan is like the president of C9, and he connected us. We talked. He was in talks with other teams too for the academy spot, and I just was probably more convincing.
You swiped that.
I didn't show anything. I promise. I didn't sleep my way up. I just showed pictures of my players.
Yeah, it's really all you need in the world is pictures of players. So you go through. This kind of brings me to the next question, because Overwatch is you're obviously very connected with Spitfire and London Spitfire, and C9 in itself. But you also have this, like, you want to stay home. Where are your goals for the future? Where are you hoping to get into Overwatch League? Are you hoping to sidestep to some other managerial role? Where is Noukky's goal? Are you happy with where you are? Do you like working with the academy teams and playing more of a development process for players going up into the Overwatch League? Or would you rather be on the team that is looking to win the trophy that has it all?
This is a really hard question for me, because there's like two sides of this medal for it. Like, I love my job. I love developing players. I love helping them to reach their goals and get into the league and trying to be a better person, a better teammate, a better player. But I also have like all my friends back in LA where I'm like, I want to see them regularly. I want to like hang out with them. I want to work in the big leagues, Like, this is like the small path, the small narrow path that I have to decide on where I want to go, because I would really like to be in the league, like, but I also like it here. So it's like, I don't even know how to explain it correctly. It's just so weird. I just want to do esports. Like, I literally just want to do esports at this point.
Okay, so you're fairly happy with where you're at then.
Yeah, I wouldn't be mad if I get an opportunity to have an interview for a GM position in Overwatch League. I would be happy to have like a team manager role, like house manager role in Overwatch League. I'm also happy here at C9 where I'm actually like helping players. So doing esports is great.
I fully agree. Also, LA is beautiful and the weather there is perfect, and I'm tired of snow. I hate snow.
I love snow. I love building snowmen.
No. I feel like I get more snow than you. I feel like I get way more snow.
Probably, yeah.
So
don't have too much snow lately.
Yeah, well, we get a lot. So it's been snowing for the last 6 months. So kill me. So kind of looking at this, what do you think is? You mentioned that developing players. One of the things, and this isn't something that's talked about, like we always talk about like the good aspects of like, oh, look at, you get to develop players, I'm so happy they get to go in the Overwatch League. But the truth is not all players develop and not all players grow. And sometimes that's due to their own volition and mental attitude, or sometimes that is due to arguably maybe a skill gap of some degree. How do you handle those moments where you have to say to someone, listen, you're not making the cut, like, and we have to get rid of you?
It's definitely one of the harder topics. Like, I think me and all of the coaching staff on British Hurricane still have problems with that, because we really want them to succeed, because we also see the good sides of them. But at the end, there is just some people that are harder to work with, and you basically have to be realistic. Like you cannot favor someone as a manager or as a coach necessarily. At least you shouldn't. Let's say that. You have to be realistic. On if you didn't work on the things that we tell you, then this is the logical consequence. And most of the time, people understand it. Sometimes they don't. Most of the time, they understand it. I didn't have like any encounters till now where it was like really troublesome when someone got removed because they are kind of professional about it. But I think it's one of the harder things you have to do as a manager, definitely, because ultimately it's if the coaches are very sure about it, then it's your last call.
So I have a question for you. This is a question that is like almost like a chicken and an egg question. So a lot of times you see teams that do well, and a lot of the credit gets put on the coach. Okay, whether or not they're doing well. But then like a meta shift happens and that team all of a sudden does bad, and then everyone blames the coach for them being bad. How much do you think a coach is actually responsible for the improvement of players? And how do you decide, hey, this coach isn't cutting it anymore?
I think when it comes to the cutting question, I want to do it first because it's like on my mind still. I think if a coach is cutting it or not is like a big question of how the players respond to him doing things. Since you want to have someone that can actually like communicate with the players well and that they feel comfortable around, I think once that doesn't happen anymore, and once the players start mistrusting the coach on certain things, like on general strategy topics or something, then it's definitely a red flag where you have to be more cautious about, is it still the right thing? Is it still the right fit for it? As for the good thing, bad thing kind of situation, or like blame and very good coach kind of situation, it's a two-edged sword in that regard, that sometimes a coach just has trouble teaching someone, or like a player has trouble understanding like certain play styles when meta shifts, and are very, very driven in their own way, like very stable, like not stable, very set in their own way.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes hard to work with them. I don't think like all the blame should be on the coach all the time, but there's definitely like ways to work around it. There's definitely sometimes coaches to blame for certain things.
Yeah, I mean, looking
but
at
it's always two people, like coaching, teaching, whatever you want to do. It's like always a corporation of two people.
Yeah, because like looking from the outside in, we look at like some of the Overwatch League teams, and you see things happening, and you're like, oh, like I'm just gonna use Mayhem because they're a good example, right? Like Mayhem, obviously last season did not do well. They did not change any of their coaching staff. They got rid of a Ryder very close to basically the start of the season. It was very close to the season already started. So you'd already had influence in at least that roster. But you see like the way that they're performing now, and I don't know if there's any way you can think to yourself that this coaching staff stays. Like / management maybe even, because they decided to go 2 years into having this lineup, right? Of like, and the decisions that they allowed this entire line. Like, at what point do you start to cut and say it's just the players that they picked up, it's the coaches? Like that seems to be a very convoluted thing looking from the outside in. And a lot of times I think what happens is people place blame maybe where it isn't always supposed to, because we don't ever really know. We don't know how much of it is the players or how much of it is the coaches. How do you decide which way it is? Are you able to watch the players and coaches interact all the time? Is it something you just have to kind of gauge, like almost like eye test it from what your experiences and what you know? Because that sounds like a terrifying decision to have to make.
For me, it's most of the time stuff that I see. I'm kind of back when we had last year British Hurricane. I have to say I was kind of the helicopter manager, if that makes sense. Where I was like interacting with them quite frequently and always being there if the coach did something and stuff like that. Where I was actually like having a good grasp of what he is doing and how the players are responding to it. At the moment, I put a tiny bit more trust in the coaching staff, where they're doing like one-on-one coachings and like VOD sessions, like private VOD sessions, where I'm not necessarily be there. But I think it's a part of being a manager to actually see, or like to actually be on top of how the players interact with the coach and how the coach interacts with the players, that you can like it has to be like a kind of feedback cycle. Like as a manager, you should be able to give feedback to players and to the coaches respectively, where if only the players criticize coaches and the other way around, it can be like very one-sided and there can be like bias and stuff. Whereas a manager, you should be the neutral party in all of that. And so I try to talk to the coaches a lot. We have like staff meetings and shit in Hurricane, where we sit together, we do the planning for the next week, what we want to focus on, who gets one-on-one coachings when, and if I do coaching sometimes myself, where I'm more going on with attitude stuff and communication stuff, because even though I played it competitively, at the moment I'm a tiny bit more out of the loop when it comes to meta and strategy decisions. And I think just being on top and being aware of it as a manager is definitely necessary. And for the Mayhem example, it's really hard to say because we literally don't know anything about the internals. So it could be that the management is a tiny bit like not on top of it. It could be that they just trust the coaches and in doing stuff, or it could also be the coaches just doing bad decisions. But it's really hard to say. In some teams, there's also problems of like players being very, very demanding on certain things, where you have the situation of, or do I make this player unhappy or not? And I know that some coaches might have problems with that, like coaches and management, where you have trouble like staying strong in front of a player when it's like a either or situation, or he pulls out the if you don't then blah 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 kind of thing.
The ultimatums, the
ultimatums. So you just have to kind of stay on your course as a manager, I think, even though if it's hard. Like I know how hard it is. I'm a person that loves to be kind to people and loves to be like friends with everyone and getting along with everyone, but sometimes you have to be that person.
Makes sense. So I have one last question for you, and it is arguably the hardest question depending on who you ask.
Yes.
So the last question, I think it's fairly simple, but I mean, that's just me. You've got to be on the show. You've got to have the experience. We've been here for quite a long time. You're not going to break the record. I don't want you to break the record. Wow,
you're cutting me off before I could break the Scoot's record? Wow.
I am. I don't want to break the record. And I've gotten a lot.
See that, guys? He wants to get rid of me. He wants to get rid of me. You heard it here first.
Yep, I do. I want to eat food.
Wow, he's saying it to my face now.
I thought you wanted honesty. What the fuck? Like, that's what you get. So the last question, very easily though. If having been on the show and having had the experience, if you could have anybody involved in esports in any capacity be on the show, who would you pick?
Oh.
See, this is why people are like, oh my god, it's so hard. And I'm just like, I can think of like four people.
I can think of many people too. The thing is like picking one. That's the problem. I want to pick someone that is realistic. Because if I say something like one of the higher ups in Overwatch League or something, or some of the production managers would probably be like unrealistic. I don't know if the PR lets them do it.
Blizzard PR is interesting. They're very wonderful people, and I hope that they respond to my emails that I've sent them, because I would love that.
Yeah, see what I mean? The other thing is I don't know the exact list of who you had on the show already.
Okay. If you say a name that I've had on the show, I'll let you know.
Okay. I would love for, since you had Scoots, did you have Jason already?
No, I have not had Jason yet.
Jason would be super interesting, I think.
For everyone who's wondering who Jason is, that's Alchemist. Alchemist is a wonderful human being. I love Alchemist.
He's like the tiny, grumpy dwarf grandpa that everybody hates but loves at the same time.
That is a very great description, and I'm going to let him know if he ever comes on this show.
Yeah, go for it.
It's going to be on the intro. Today's
call him
guest,
Tiny
I'm
Dwarf.
excited to help, is it's a tiny dwarf man who is very grumpy, who everyone loves,
But hates at the same time.
but hates at the same time. I don't hate him. I love him. Everything
No.
about him I love. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't normally do shout-outs. If you want shout-outs, I will let you have them.
Nah, it's fine.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being on. Thank you so much for being on the show, Noukky. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had some fun. This has been Deep Dives into the Minds of Esports. My name is Blake Panashevitz, and until next time, have a wonderful day.